In this worksheet called ExactMatch, we're trying to get the ratings in column E to be translated into a numerical score. The table in columns A and B gives us the lookup information that we need. And so there's a function in cell F2 that appears not to be giving us the answer we would want. Fair, as we look at the table, should be a 71. So let's take a look at the function in F2. It's a VLOOKUP. In other examples where we were trying to match numerical information in an approximate way, we simply would put in 3 arguments using VLOOKUP. But here it's a little bit different. We need an exact match. We have to find the word fair exactly in that table that's in columns A and B. When we do find it, we want our answers to come out of the second column. So far, this function has everything in order. We're looking up cell E2. We've got a table over in columns A and B. We want to get our answers from the second column of that table. However, for an exact match, we need a 4th argument. And as soon as we enter a comma here, the pop-up tip gives us 2 choices. True for approximate match. Now that's called the default, and you don't need to use it in those situations. You can just ignore it. But if you want an exact match, you use false. Now there's an option here for using 0 as well. You can click on this and press tab, or you can type it either way. Now, do you think you would instinctively know that false means exact match? I don't think so, but that's the way it works. We use false or 0, and I'll use false at first because it's more commonly seen. So anytime you're looking up information, and the information that you're looking up, if it has to match exactly with information in the left column of a table, then following the column that has the answers, you put in the word false to make sure it's got to be an exact match. So when we press enter here, we're expecting to get a 71. And that's exactly what we get. And by double-clicking the lower right-hand corner here, we should get correct answers for the others as well. You check out a few, seems to make sense. As an option or as an alternative to false, you can use 0. Now, I'm not saying that that's any more logically accurate, or you wouldn't instinctively use 0 either, but there is another lookup function that we will see a bit later called match that does use 0 for an exact match. So with that in mind, why not use 0 here also? It is less typing too. And a third thing is that false seems to suggest that maybe something didn't work, even though it means exact match. So you could just as easily use 0 as well as false in these examples here. A couple of issues come up when you're making comparisons for exact match. First of all, if somebody had just typed something different here, completely different. If I type in mediocre, that's not in the list. And this is an exact match kind of VLOOKUP. And so there is no mediocre found in the table. So what else can Excel do here but provide an answer like this? So obviously that's not going to work. But here's what's more insidious. I'm going to put a trailing space behind fair and George Babbitt right there. I'm double-clicking to edit. I'll put a space behind it and then enter. And you see what's happened. And down here under Sebastian Cabot, I'm going to put in multiple spaces between very and good. And that doesn't work either. And sure enough, a leading space somewhere here in front of Norman Bates, those are all failing. So a quick workaround here using another function, and not uncommon when it comes to using VLOOKUPs with exact match, is to use, in effect, a cleaned up version of what's in column E. And the function to use here is called trim. Now, trim removes leading spaces, trailing spaces, and multiple consecutive interspaces get reduced to 1. So as we use trim on the first entry here, it will solve the trailing space problem there and cause our match to work. And as I recopy this downward, all these except for the entry under mediocre will get corrected. So we've got the multiple spaces that are dealt with there, and it's always using the trim function to clean up the data. And the leading space that we have down here, that's also dealt with properly here as well. For an exact match, you need a 4th argument of using 0 or false to mean exact match. The 4th argument is needed. This is always going to be the case when you're looking up text entries, and it's also going to be the case if you're looking up ID type numbers. So sometimes VLOOKUP needs to have an exact match. If you're using HLOOKUP on a horizontal table, the same thing is true. You'd be using that same 4th argument of 0 or false for exact matches.